half a year with Unity. Let's go! Alright, now let's take a breath. My journey with Unity started 6 months ago. But before I start, we will first have to travel back in time to the past. Ever since I was small, I always had a dream to create whatever ideas in my mind. Therefore, I dabbled in photo editing, animation, drawing, video editing, as well as filming. But none of these hobbies really clicked, as something just felt missing. Now, before I started learning Unity, I had some prior experience in programming and game development. In April 2020, I was making a custom game in Dota 2's map editor. The game was a recreation of a game in Warcraft 3, whereby it's a hide and seek game. However, the game created will be locked in Dota 2 and can only be accessed in the Dota 2 client. So with this in mind, I searched for a much more flexible and suitable game engine, which I can easily build and share my game. After a few months of developing the custom map, I had to stop and start my college. Everything was fun and happy in college until the university in Malaysia has to close. 2020 was, for the most part, a terrible year for most of us. But at the same time, for me, it was a blessing in disguise. Semester break, lockdown, bored as hell. Being the bored potato I was, YouTube was one of my salvation. By chance, I found Dani's channel. Dani is a game dev and does funny videos about it, and with his humor, he instantly captured my attention. And then I was inspired to learn game development. Thus, I decided to learn Unity. I tried learning Unity using the Unity Play tutorials that Unity provides, but it was just too boring, so nah. And thus I decided to just, like any other silly fool, blind dive into making an actual game. And thus I set out to create this simple 2D game with the minimal coding experience I had. So I started off with designing and creating my game character in Photoshop. I named her Ivy, and people say she looks like Eva from Wall-E. Or what my brother keeps saying, I'm Vivo's mascot, but okay. And then proceed watching a few specific tutorial videos and follow along. Thanks Bertie, thanks. And in 2 weeks, I was able to churn out a playable version, and 2 weeks later, I released the game. And looking back, I'm actually kind of surprised at how I was able to churn out a full game complete with sounds, menus, and settings within 1 month with no prior experience on Unity. And next, I tried to implement AI for the game, as currently you can only play it if you have 2 hands and 2 separate brains. I mean, you can, but you'll be playing with yourself, so that won't be fun.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
And or if you have a friend, which I don't. And hence, I decided to try machine learning. So as you can see, machine learning, 1 month of Unity experience, minimal coding experience. This was a recipe for... So bunch of errors kept spitting at me while I was installing Python, and the code that I wrote just somehow does not work, and the spaghetti coding that keeps breaking my game totally does not help. And to make things worse, my motivation hit rock bottom, and my university classes started to get busier, and thus I gave up. A month went by as I concentrated on my studies. Then a friend of mine shared to me something that I desperately needed to resume my journey on game development. She introduced to me Game Jam, more specifically Blackthornprod Game Jam. It was my first time joining a game jam. So for those who don't know what is a game jam is where you make a new game from scratch within a short time period of usually around 1 week. All game jam has a team. So the team for Blackthornprod Game Jam was
less is more.
And thus I spent the entire day thinking, what does it mean? What can I build upon? What interesting mechanics can I derive from this team? Eventually, I settled on the game concept, whereby it's like Pokemon, a turn-based RPG game, but with a twist! The premise of the game is pretty simple. Each stage there is a monster and you have to defeat the monster using the monster you have. Now the special mechanic here is that you can adjust the stat of your monster however you like, no limits. But the catch here is the less stat points your monster has, the more points you can gain when you defeat and finish the round. So the idea here is that you adjust your monster's stats just enough to defeat the enemy to gain as much points as possible. I will put the link in the description if you want to try and exploit the game mechanics yourself. And for the next 2 weeks, I focus on my studies until the day Brekkie Game Jam starts. And if you don't see where I'm heading, I kinda got addicted to Game Jam, yeah. So the team was announced Stronger Together. So after hours of thinking, I came up with a very simple game mechanics that utilizes the meaning of Stronger Together. It is a 3D platformer game, but with the twist! And the aim of the game is just simple, like any other platformer, reach the end or reach the goal. However, along the way, you will need to gather allies, which will allow you to build platforms by sacrificing them. Hence, the more allies you have, the stronger you are. Making this game proved to be quite challenging, as it was my first time making a 3D game. Well, the first problem I came upon was 3D movement. So, how to make 3D third-person movement? And then I yoinked the code. I learned from it. Yep. And during that time, well, I was having exams as well as a bunch of assignments. So with the minimal time I could squeeze, I managed to make a rough game. The sound were not satisfying. The movement is so janky. The camera is just whack. The level designs was so bad that it's like my dog came up with the level designs. No, joking. That would be an insult to my dog. I love her. And at the last day of submission, I was still fixing and adding new content. 15 minutes before, I was still fixing the code. I let a sigh of relief. I was finally done. In a rush, I upload the game, and everything was good, and everyone lived happily ever after. Was what I hoped had happened. I missed the deadline. To this day, I still regret being unable to submit the game in time. 1 week later, I seek to redeem myself in the Wowie Game Jam! The theme for the Game Jam was
Failure is progress.
This time, I decided to sprinkle a little bit of story to the game. The story supposedly goes like this. You woke up in a small, strange room and you are greeted by a voice. A voice of a robot, an AI. Hello, human, can you hear me? I think you should be. Anyway, you have committed... Alright, anyway, just head to the teleporter and start right away. Go! And this next part I was supposed to implement, but I ran out of time. And while diving into the virtual world, a voice of a human could be heard. The voice urges you not to follow what the AI says and do not complete the task. The AI never meant to let human go. He explained, they wanted you to complete the task over and over and over again for an eternity to gather randomness data from humans' behavior, and then the voice cuts out. So the game will be a series of small mini-games, and you are to do the exact opposite of what the instruction says or given to you. And every time you did the exact opposite of the instruction, the game crashes and you're transported to another game world. Supposedly, with every game world you travel to, you will get more clues and voice messages on how you're able to escape, what is this world, how many worlds are there, what is the current situation of the outside world, and who are you. However, I totally underestimated how much work is needed to be put, even if it's a very small minigame. So it took me so long just to make one little tiny small minigame. So in the end, I had to cut down on a lot of things. And the game turned out to be pretty okay. And for the next whole month, I concentrated on my studies and learned Unity during my spare time before eventually joining the next Game Jam. College Game Jam. This Game Jam theme was connection. I came up with the idea of two characters, siblings, connected to each other via a link. It is a puzzle platformer game whereby you need to solve puzzles and reach the end of the stage, all the meanwhile being connected via a link. And then you have to control the two characters simultaneously, and then you gotta use the interesting mechanics of having to control two characters and then complete the stages. And honestly speaking, this game was by far the most polished game I have ever done yet. Learning from past experiences, I decided to keep it as simple as possible. By keeping it simple, I can have more time to polish the game. And for the first time, I actually learned and used Unity Particle System! Making the stage for the game was pretty easy as well. I was only using primitive cubes, and thus it really makes development much faster and easier. And then I can have more time to utilize the special mechanics that the game have to make a better stage. However, I ran into a weird bug where my character would get stuck while moving on flat surface. Well, if anyone has an idea of why it happened, please comment in the section below. And also while you're at it, click the subscribe button and the notification button. Overall, I was really content with what I could do this time around. After half a year of learning game development, I realized what you need is not motivation, skills, or talents, but rather persistence. To persist through. The more you persist, the more knowledge you can gain, and the better you are. This is Kudoshi, and this was my half a year progress with Unity. See you guys soon.